All right, well, I'll go ahead and get things started and then hand it over to Dr. Srinivasan. But good morning, everyone, and welcome to the OK-HAWQS workshop. My name is Kevin Wagner, and I serve as the director of the Oklahoma Water Resources Center at Oklahoma State University. And it's my pleasure today to co-host the OK-HAWQS workshop in collaboration with the Oklahoma Conservation Commission and Texas A&M Spatial Sciences Lab. So we've worked real closely with Greg Clarkson and Brad Rogers at OCC over the last year, along with Dr. Srinivasan and then Abu Monserrat here at the Water Center to develop the OK-HAWQS model. So your first question may be, what is HAWQS? I'm sure many of you already know, but for those of you that don't, first of all, it stands for Hydrologic and Water Quality System. So essentially what that is a web-based interactive water quantity and water quality modeling system. And it employs the SWAT model as its core modeling engine. And some of the awesome parts of it, I mean, beside it being web-based, it also utilizes preloaded input data. So because it is a web-based, you don't necessarily need the GIS software or to have the latest version of SWAT on your computer. And because it's already got the preloaded input data, you don't have to go find and get all that plugged in. So that's a huge time saver. And the HAWQS model was calibrated for flow, sediment, total nitrogen, and total phosphorus for the whole US, using about 70 river sites across the US, most of them being 8-digit HAWQS, but some 10 and 12-digit HAWQS. So what we've done over the last year is to work with Srini and his team to develop OK-HAWQS. And essentially that involved providing some customized input data for Oklahoma. So improve some of the land cover data for the state, some of the crop data, higher resolution soils, as well as DEMs were put in, utilize some of the weather data and stations that we have available here in Oklahoma, integrated some more extensive point source data. So we made a lot of improvements to the national HAWQS as we developed the OK-HAWQS. And secondly, we calibrated it for 40 sites, river sites in Oklahoma. So now, having that first phase done, it's ready for your use. And we encourage you to take a look at it, to use it. We understand there's still going to be some more improvements to be made, and we want to do that. We'll probably talk a little bit about that at the very end of today, about some maybe other input data that we would like to see integrated within OK-HAWQS. But it's ready to use starting today. So in today's workshop, Dr. Srinivasan will be reviewing some of the key aspects of the model and demonstrating its use. So with that, Srini, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. And as Kevin mentioned, this is HAWQS is in the works for quite some time, where US EPA has helped us in develop the system for the entire US. And now we are entering into much more specialized for specific regions and specific community, user community, and so on, actually. What I'm going to do today is I have maybe about 10 or 12 slides just to introduce you for those who are not familiar with HAWQS, what HAWQS is all about, and its use and where it's it could be applicable, or where it can be used very quickly in putting together a modeling system. And then later, I will go through a hands-on session of setting up a model for one watershed, and maybe run through a couple of scenarios, maybe a point source scenario and a non-point source scenario, like changing cropland systems and things like that. And then towards the end of this presentation, I want to allocate bulk of the time for discussion actually, so that we can move forward, talk about not only what we have planned in the future, but also you could see how or what that may be missing, or that could be potentially added, or potentially could be considered in the future actually. So those are all the kind of thing, and any questions you may have even otherwise during this presentation or workshop. We are recording, so you will be able to get access to this through most likely from the Kevin's website, Oklahoma Water Resource Institute website. So, and we may be able to share the presentation or the recording through the HAWQS website also, once it's cleaned up and whatnot. So with that, there is no real formality. You could stop me as we go along. We have plenty of time, so we should be able to cover a lot of the stuff, and we have more time for discussion. So please feel free to jump in anytime as we make presentation, actually, as we go through this workshop. I'm assuming everybody can hear me clearly.
Yes, I hear you loud and clear.
Thanks. So what is HAWQS? HAWQS is a statewide, for the state of Oklahoma. We have similar thing coming up for Texas, South Carolina, and a few other states, and specific river basin authorities within the state of Texas, and some in Iowa, and others are starting to embrace HAWQS platform. So it is a platform that integrates not only the data sets that's required to build a model, but it also has got the model where you could run the model entirely on a cloud-based system and then analyze that, actually, like comparing scenarios or comparing with observed data set, or all those stuff would be possible with the HAWQS platform. So that pretty much eliminates the requirement for somebody needing to know all the GIS and all the databases, the data structures and things of that nature, but more into applying the model in a 10 to 15 minutes. You should be able to build a model anywhere in Oklahoma and start looking at analyzing the results, whether that's a land use change, climate change, or land management issues, or you want to look at water utilization or water use, or point source matters, actually. So any of those stuff is possible with the HAWQS platform. It's capable of supporting wide variety, all the way from an individual farm field level operation to the entire river basin that touches Oklahoma. So we are not only doing, even though it's for the state of Oklahoma, we also have all the surrounding watersheds that either flow into Oklahoma or flowing out of Oklahoma is also included in that, actually. But to select a watershed, you have to select some watershed inside the Oklahoma in order to able to build a model, actually. Okay, so some of the applications could be economic policy analysis or non-point source pollution and whatnot, actually. You'll be able to analyze for sediments, pesticides, if you have pesticides information, nutrients. So sediments and nutrients are automatically built in with the inputs, actually. Whereas pathogens and pesticides are, the model is capable, but we don't have enough good inputs to do that. For example, if you know how farmers or producers use pesticide in the watershed, and that's of a concern, like a drinking water supply or whatever, then you can input those pesticide and able to run the model. Actually, you can parameterize the inputs and run for pesticide simulation. Same thing goes for pathogens also. Okay, so specifically, HAWQS is a server client modeling system that uses web-based interface. So you don't have to have any high-end computing on your end. Everything is done on the server side. You may be able to even use a tablet or even a phone, for example, a smartphone, to access and submit your job, and you can walk away when the job is completed. It'll send you an email if you requested for an email, so that you can come back and continue on that, actually. So you don't have to be logged in, or you don't have to be constantly on the system to operate or to use the HAWQS system, actually. It uses nationally available federal government databases in most part. Most of them are public domain databases in specifically for Oklahoma, we not only provided the HAWQ-12 spatial resolution data set, we also went ahead and developed a HAWQ-14, which subdivides the HAWQ-12 into HAWQ-14 actually. So the HAWQ-14, the average size of a sub watershed is 20 square kilometer, or roughly around 8 square mile. So that means each, like if you're talking about NexRad, the Doppler radar, that is 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer. So you're talking about 2 pixels of a NexRad is the resolution of your watershed in building your HAWQS platform. It uses NHD plus, national NHD plus data set for all the stream network and watershed delineations and things of that nature. And the nice thing about it is it can use the latest SWAT model. So as the model gets updated, upgraded, bug fixes, the HAWQS system will continue to adapt that actually, so that a year from now or 2 years from now, if you want to come back and run a model, your data sets would be able to run on the latest SWAT model also actually. And I already mentioned about the NHD stream network that it uses. Again, it's a work that's been going on for the last 30 plus years. And EPA is a major integral part of this development process. And of course, Texas A&M with USDA ARS at Temple, Texas, are the major, I would say, backbone for this platform development and so on and so forth. And it all got started because of a USDA NRCS project, which is currently called SEEP. It used to be called HUMUS in the past. So that's got, it's spun off of that project actually. HAWQS, in a specific terms, it's a very simple user interface, web development platform. Having said that, you do have the option to download the model from HAWQS and be able to run it on your desktop also, using a freely available tool in SWAT website called Swat Editor. Swat Editor is a non-GIS version of the SWAT platform or SWAT editor tool that you can take the HAWQS input data set and feed it through the SWAT editor and be able to customize to the nth degree and run the model for any application that you may be interested in. And like I already mentioned, you can analyze a small city to individual farms or field or micro catchments to all the way to the river basin scale. Okay. It says 48 states. It's 40. The database came from the 48 states, but it's specifically for Oklahoma, and it supports more simple to complex analysis using SWAT. For those who are not familiar with SWAT, I'm going to spend 2 slides. I don't do justice by talking about SWAT in 2 slides, but I want you to be aware. SWAT is driven through the weather that has got a comprehensive hydrological process that includes erosion and sedimentation, erosion from the landscape, sedimentation in the channels, land and soil water management, crop and vegetation. There are only very few models in the world that has crop growth as integral part of the watershed or water quality model. SWAT is one of them actually. And it has got a detailed nitrogen and phosphorus cycling, pesticides and bacteria are the various processes. One of the nice things about SWAT is it integrates all of them, meaning if we make a mistake in any one of these processes, it will get reflected in various outputs. So it is highly interactive, interconnected processes that they all communicate with each other, so that it's a robust technology in terms of trying to build in a lot of feedback mechanism. Thereby, if there is something goes wrong, you'll be able to easily identify and correct it and make sure things are working, instead of each individual component is an independent. Thereby, if something goes wrong in one, it may not get transferred to the next one. So we may not be able to identify whether that process is correct or not. This gives you a high level schematic diagram of the hydrological budget or hydrological process in SWAT. So in SWAT, we have the watershed, Then the watershed is subdivided into sub-watershed, and each sub-watershed is further subdivided by landscapes. When I say landscape, I'm talking about the unique combination of land use, soils, and slope within the subbasin. So that landscape is what I'm describing here. That landscape could be a tree crop, or it could be an annual crop like corn, soybean, winter wheat, and so on, or it could be a grassland, okay? Or it can be urban, it can be wetland, it can be any land use actually. So that land use is growing over a soil, okay? That's what the soil here, that soil can up to 10 soil layers. Then we have an unsaturated zone, shallow aquifer, and deep aquifer. So when the rain comes here on any given day, or it could be irrigation in those places where there are irrigation. So that rain is partitioned into surface runoff and infiltration into groundwater, into the soil. That water that's in the soil is available for plant evaporation and soil evaporation and plant transpiration, okay? And the water that percolates to the shallow aquifer can return back as a return flow or lateral flow from the soil profile. And then through the confined layer, water could recharge to the deep aquifer. So every one of this is a model output here. The only input is your precipitation, your plant, and the soil parameter. So this is also called what we call blue water, green water. Blue water means the renewable water that's available, which is partitioned from your precipitation to runoff, lateral, and return, and deep aquifer recharge. And the green water is the amount of water consumed by the plant and the soil evaporation. And then the green water storage is your soil moisture storage and the storage in your aquifer. Okay, I don't want to go through this in more detail, but SWAT is very comprehensive in terms of hydrology, using the climate inputs, and it's got a detailed land management and land crop and land management, as well as the land management by itself, actually. Okay. SWAT is in making more than 50 years, okay, by the USDA and Texas A&M. It has got a robust user community that tested this model all over the world. And currently, this is about a month-old slide. It's about 4,500 peer-reviewed publications. This is one of the largest publications in the world, I mean, in terms of models in the world. If you want to compare the SWAT with the next comparable model, you're looking at maybe in the hundreds or 200s papers. So whereas SWAT is by far the largest, and we are publishing around 600 peer-reviewed publications per year now. So that's almost 1.75 papers per day is getting published based on the SWAT model work. And we do conduct several conferences and workshops of use of SWAT. And HAWQS is a new platform that's going to be added to the SWAT community. So let me stop right here before I jump back into the thing. So one of the nice things about the HAWQS platform is it's not only available online on a cloud-based system without needing to have a high-power computing or GIS software or data manipulations and data gathering and whatnot. But since it's an online platform, it is a collaborative software, meaning you could, for example, person A can develop the model and work on hydrology and pass it on to somebody at water quality, and somebody else could run on a policy analysis, or someone else can analyze on point source issues. So this is a network of community of practitioners can work together to develop a model, which is what it's supposed to be. That's how we have been all along doing that. Actually, is a multidisciplinary, multi-institutional arrangement that could be done collaboratively over the platform. Second, all the stuff work you do is available online, and it can be offline too. You can take it offline and do any analysis you want, and you can re-upload your model back to online platform and share that with anyone else anyone you want to share with, actually. So it has got a very flexible way of managing it. Third, let's say if people are working on a model and they walk away or they move on to a new job or new opportunities and whatnot, that model is not lost with that person actually. That's what's happening now with most of the people leaving the job. It goes with their computers or with their hard drive and whatnot actually. Whereas here, this is the living model. It's going to be an online system, thereby it can be used by others actually and transferred to others. So your group person can transfer that model to others to take ownership of this model and whatnot actually. And last but not the least is it is open source, public domain, transparent, and easy reproduction so that you are able to reproduce your results much more in a transparent manner actually, so everybody gets the same answer. Not I ran the model, I got a different one, and you ran it for different answers and that kind of thing. So we are working with from the same platform, and everybody knows what went in the model and what was analyzed, and it keeps track of all the changes you made into the model as a metadata. So 2 years from now, if you come back and look at the model, you know exactly what was done to that model and what was changed in the model and what was modified and so on and so forth, and what version of the model was run. All those information will be there. And it has got an opportunity for users to upload their own report. Let's say you went ahead and built a model and ran the models and wrote a report, and then you can upload that report and that could become a repository, or you published a paper and you can upload that paper and that becomes available to everyone else actually, so that others can cite that work or use that work and continue to improve on and whatnot actually. With that, let me stop right here, answer any questions at the conceptual stage of what HAWQS is all about before I jump in and start showing you an online demo of the tool. Any questions so far?
Now, feel free to use the chat for questions, or certainly feel free to speak up as well.
Yeah.
Kevin, the chat for those.
Excellent. Kevin, you can jump me and you can alert me if there is a discussion I need to engage in as the chat box start to fill in with the questions. Also, because it's a 4-hour, do you think it's necessary for a 10-minute summer biological break sometime? What do you think?
Yeah, maybe in about 30 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, so maybe around
a good stopping point in 30 minutes, we could do that.
Yeah, okay, around 10:30 we can do that. Okay, let's do that. So you can remind me when that time is actually. Wonderful. So this is the OK-HAWQS website. So as you could see, it states as OK-HAWQS.tamu.edu. It's truly a collaborative work across many institutions, and the main contribution is from the Oklahoma Conservation Commission, the DEQ, and the Oklahoma State University through the Water Resource Institute that Kevin leads. And of course, Texas A&M and USDA are partners in this. And I have to say that EPA is a major contributor for this HAWQS platform development and so on and so forth.
So Srini, there was one quick question.
Yes.
The question is, are the organic contaminants limited to pesticides, or can it be modified for other types of contaminants with different properties?
Yes, you can modify the pesticide. You can edit the pesticide properties and add other organic compounds like pharmaceuticals, or you're looking at hormones, or you are looking at PFAS, for example. So I know PFAS is a hot subject matter now, and there are people using SWAT for PFAS simulation, and then they are modifying the pesticide properties to simulate or to mimic something like PFAS actually. Yes, absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Srini.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Again, you can come on to this website and you're able to sign up for that actually. And once it gets approved, you will have access to this platform and start manipulating and managing your own projects. So I'm going to, since I already signed in, I see my projects actually. So when I click on my projects, you'll see all my projects. It's like a dashboard that shows all the projects that I've created so far, for example. And it also shows you if I have multiple scenarios, it shows you for each project what are the different scenarios I have run, for example. And also it shows you whether I ran the project with HAWQ12 or HAWQ14 or what resolution of the data set. So you can see these two are the same watershed. And you can see this was done with the HAWQ12. There's just one HAWQ12, whereas this one is HAWQ14. There are two HAWQ14. And as you move your cursor, it tells you what is that HAWQ14 number, what is the name of the creek that you're modeling, and what is the size of each sub-watershed, and so on and so forth. Actually. Okay. And on the top right-hand side, you'll see a few buttons here. Actually, this is the place where you can list all these projects that you have, and you can create a new project, and you can also upload your own project. Let's say you taken a project, ran with it, and make some modification offline, and you want to come back and upload your project, you should be able to do that. So this is basically project management. And this gives you anytime on any menu, if you want to come back to this main page, you simply click on this project dashboard. It'll come back to this page here, actually. You will not see this. This is for administrators only. So things like approval and things like backend database management and things like that. You will not see this. Actually, only the administrator will see this menu. And then, of course, you can have your own account or group settings, meaning you can create your own group, your own user network, and you can share your models. So that's what this particular here, actually. So you can create your groups, your own account, and change passwords and things of that nature. And you can always provide us feedback. This is very important, actually, as you are using the system. If you have ideas or if you have other thoughts and you think something's not working or something is doing a good job or you may need to improve on, you are welcome to provide us feedback and error reports, and we will constantly monitor this and provide feedback on what's happening there, actually, and how to improve. And sometimes it could be general questions. Down the road, I have not consulted this with Kevin or DEQ or Oklahoma Conservation Commission yet. We may even develop a user group for Oklahoma users so that you all can help each other, but also you all can able to share your experiences and things like that. So that's something we may plan in the future. And finally, there is a help menu here. Actually, when you click on the help menu, it will take you to our documentation and support. Here it gives you the generic HAWQS user guide. And anytime you use the data sets from here, we would like you to cite this paper so that that's get automatically credited, but also we can keep track of how many papers are getting published with HAWQS and so on. And it gives you some of the examples, okay? And then the documentation from the HAWQS SWAT 2012 documentation, and more about some additional tables and additional information, data information for you, actually. The most important thing for HAWQS Oklahoma is what did we do in terms of calibration? If you remember, Kevin mentioned about 40 plus sites were done in Oklahoma. So that is documented here. It's a preliminary document. It's not finalized yet, actually, but at least that gives you an idea of what's been done. And so it shows you the list of data sets that's used in the HAWQS platform. Okay, you can see them, all of them here. And then it also talks about the calibration validation steps and process. And then it goes to the table that shows you all those gauges that is used, and the river basin and the time period and the latitude, longitude of those gauge stations. And here it gives you a snapshot of the map where it got calibrated. The blue dots that you see here, those are the sites that was calibrated, actually. Some of them are multi-site calibration. Some of them are just one single site calibration, for example, like here. And some of these watersheds also just one, or maybe this one is got two. So that gives you a rough idea where we have calibrated so far, but if there are need for other sites, and we are always continuing to improve on that. In fact, we are in discussion with the OCC and the DEQ on additional sites, but so far it's only for flow that's calibrated. In the coming phase, we are also contemplating to add water quality, such as sediment, total nitrogen, and total phosphorus. So we will be adding those as we go along. And there is a continuous improvement on the HAWQS platform in terms of the interface and adding new inputs and so on and so forth. So those will be done automatically, and that becomes available to you every time you access the website.
So Srini, there's a
yes.
question about what criteria were used for calibration and validation.
Right here, that's okay. Calibration process. What are the statistics we use for deciding whether it's good or not good calibration? We primarily used these papers to guide us on that process. And these are the three statistics we use: p-bias, Nash-Sutcliffe, and Kling-Gupta efficiency. And with that, we have produced all the statistics for each site that was calibrated so far. So you can look at this to figure out where we're doing good and where we are not doing good, and so on and so forth. Like, for example, the very first one, we are not doing that great, like Nash and things like that. So the minute we saw that, we know either the gauge is not wrong, or where we are calibrating with SWAT is wrong, or there may be a significant diversion of water that's going on that we are not capturing actually. Okay, so whereas in most of the other places we are doing good, there are a couple of other places we are not doing good. So those are all need to be further investigated, and by looking at the data and looking at what may be going on in that watershed. Okay, so this, if you look at this North Fork, there are 3 of them. 2 of them are, one of them was not doing good. The other 2 are somewhat decent actually. So again, this one small gauge is not doing well. You can look at the average flow is only 0.84 meter cube per second. Okay, USGS normally claims it needs to be at least minimum so many CFS in order to have confidence in their measurements and things like that. So one has to take those into account also actually. Okay. Again, I'm not saying everything is completely done. There are some that are still need improvement, but we need more data in order for us to make the improvement, because just the modeling parameters alone is not going to help, because there may be some local abstraction or local diversions or local action that's happening that may not be captured with our current inputs. Any other questions on the data or the calibration process? And then yes, we go on showing each watershed separately and what parameter we use for calibration. So it's a very detailed document that you can go through at your time, actually, at your leisure time. Go ahead, please.
Yes, looking at the calibration parameter, like the percent bias, the Nash-Sutcliffe, or the R-square value, which one will you look at and determine that indeed the watershed is great?
Mostly I look at KGE is a combination of Nash, mean, and standard deviation. These 3 are put together as the KGE actually. So I normally use KGE and p-bias are the 2 that I use for acceptance of a particular model.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I went back to the HAWQS website. Oklahoma HAWQS website now. So what I'm going to do now is to show you quickly how to build a model actually. So I may use this watershed. So I'm going to copy this in my buffer. Let me say create a new project. So that'll show the Oklahoma boundary here, even though we show the other nearby states also. If you try to click any other location other than inside Oklahoma, you will get a warning message. If you click somewhere here, it'll say, tell you, please select a watershed within Oklahoma. Okay. And here you can choose whether you want to do that for HUC 12 or HUC 14. Okay. So let's say I want to model somewhere in watershed. So let's say I want to model this watershed here. All I need to do is I simply click on that river. It'll automatically draw the HUC 12 boundary that carries all the way to the head watershed. Okay, so the head watershed is maybe somewhere in Colorado, and it carries all the way here to Oklahoma, including some in Kansas and so on and so forth, actually. Okay, so we do have the inputs for the entire system here, actually. Okay, but the selection of the watershed has to happen inside Oklahoma to set up your model. And you can, like I said, you can move your mouse to find out exactly the 12-digit number and the area and the creeks and all those stuff. Another nice feature is you can change your background map. Actually, if this is not good enough, if you want more to go to satellite map, you can change it to satellite map and you'll be able to see that more clearly what's underneath that. For example, you can see the central perch system, ag and range and forest and whatnot, actually. Okay, and you'll also see the image is starting to, so you see some of these gaps here, actually. That's because it's a simplified polygon for fast refresh. But later, when you develop the model, you'll get the actual polygon, that shapefile, that will be much more finer resolution than this, actually. Okay. Let me go back to the default map. And the same thing, you can also do it at the HUC 14. We highly recommend not to do HUC 14 for a large basin like this. So if it is a small watershed, and even though I selected already HUC 14 for this entire thing, you're going to see, you can see this HUC 12 was 360, and HUC 14 is almost 1,629 watersheds. Some of the HUC 14s are really big because there is no river flowing here in some of them, actually. These are all the western part of the Oklahoma where it's completely dry, okay? And some of them are very, very tiny, actually. So you can see a lot of small area, like 20 square kilometer or 16 square kilometer and so on. So very small ones, like 12 square kilometer and so on. Okay, so maybe it's a little bit better to show. Oh, by the way, there is an advanced option in which you can start and stop your watershed anywhere in the basin. For example, you don't want to model the entire basin. You want to start from the border of Oklahoma, or maybe there is a major dam here, actually, and you want to say, I don't want to model anything upstream with the dam or reservoir. I want to model from the reservoir to the watershed outlet. You can do that, actually. Okay, so for example, let me try to come to some smaller ones so that you can see them much more clearly. Okay, let's take a look at this here. So here is a lake, Fort Cobb Reservoir. So I could select a watershed somewhere here. Oh, that's also pretty big. That's going to be small. And I could say, okay, I don't want to model what's coming into Fort Cobb, but I want to model only downstream from Fort Cobb to wherever this major river, actually, Washita River is flowing. I can say, begin selecting the starting subbasin. So if I know the end subbasin already where I want to stop, and I can put a starting subbasin by simply clicking on this basin here. So that's why I added here, actually. So that means I'm modeling from the reservoir outlet to this basin, for example, as just a simple example. Then selecting. So now it's going to show you only the watershed between here and here, but you can also see there is another branch that's going all the way here also, actually. So it all depends on where you want to stop and where you want to start and stop, actually. So you can model only the area that you are interested in modeling. You don't have to model the entire watershed if you're not interested. By the way, there is one more option. I'm just showing you all this option just so that you know it's there, actually, and you can make use of them when you have a real project. You can also check this box here that will show you the connectivity. So how the basins or subbasins are connected, which subbasin is connected, which subbasin, how the water flows all the way to the watershed outlet, just to a schematic diagram. Okay. Okay. So having said all those stuff, I wanted to go and start building a model. And let's say I want to use the one that I was playing around before, actually. So this is a watershed called Sagar Creek, which shares between Oklahoma and Arkansas. Okay, you can see that's a kind of state border right there. So it's just a 1 HUC 12 or 2 HUC 14 watersheds actually. Like I said, you could use any watershed within Oklahoma to model this actually. I could have taken watershed here or all the way here, whichever the one that you're interested in. Just to keep the size smaller so that I can run a couple of scenarios for you very quickly and show you the results and comparisons and things like that. That's why I've chosen this small one. Okay, so since I already have a project with the same name, I'm going to call this as my demo. You just give a name for your project and you say create my project. So in a fraction of a second, you are able to create a SWAT project for that specific watershed that you are interested in. In this particular watershed, it's got 2 sub-watersheds, okay? It's a total size is about 56 square kilometer, or it's roughly about 20 square mile, okay? 20 or 22 square mile. And it has got about 206 hydrological response unit. So if you want to, whenever you see this link, you can download the data, okay? So the HRU, if you want to download the HRU, that's going to tell you what land use, what soil, what slope, and how much area of each HRU, all those statistics you can get very quickly by clicking on that map and downloading the data if you want. So once you set up your model, now you can set up your hydrological response unit, okay? What is HRU? HRU is the distribution of your unique land use, soil, and slope. Okay, when you overlay the 3 GIS layer, land use, soil, and slope, that's what the HRU. So it shows you pasture is the dominant land use, almost 31.35 square kilometer, which is 55% of the watershed. The next major one is forest, deciduous forest. Then the next is urban in this watershed. Agricultural is very, very small percentage here actually, okay? So like soybean has got 0.29 square kilometer. We have, these are all riparian forest. So when you move a cursor, it will tell you what that land use is actually, okay? So the land use map came from 2016 NLCD for all land uses except cropland. Cropland came from CDL, Crop Data Layer by USDA NASS for year 2016, 17, 18, and 19, 3 years of data. So we can able to establish crop rotation, okay? So what crop is grown from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 and so on and so forth. Okay, if you have to protect a particular land use because they are so small, okay, so that you don't want to subject to any elimination, what is the minimum area? Because this watershed is 56 square kilometer. So if I say 0.5, what is 0.5? 0.5 is going to be equal to, okay, 1%, right? So I'm saying any land use that is less than 1%, I don't want to model that HRU. I mean, you can put this anything, or you can leave it 0 so that you will consider all the 206 HRUs, every unique combination. But we know when you overlay 3 GIS layers, because of the error associated with your inputs, like land use map, soils map, and slope map, there will be a lot of sliver polygons, like very, very tiny, tiny polygons, actually. I'm trying to remove some of them so that it can be used in the modeling, because they are not going to make any significant difference in your final model output. So it's one way to minimize the clutter or the errors associated with your input data set. But if you want to protect a particular land use, you can always check it actually. So if you check the box next to any land use, those will be exempt from elimination, meaning it will not be subject to this criteria of 0.5 square kilometer. So let's say, for example, I want to protect soybean because later I'm going to show you a demo of how to change that to something different like corn or winter wheat or some other crop, for example, okay? Or if you want to say, okay, I also want to protect this urban high density Okay, you can select that actually. So whatever land use that you want to protect, you can able to do that here. And it shows you how big of an area in the entire watershed actually, not just one subbasin, but the entire watershed. So I selected these two just as a demonstration, and I'm putting a threshold of 0.5 square kilometers. Okay. And then I say, click Save Changes. So with that, it's going to automatically calculate. So it's almost eliminated 166. So there are 166 HRUs or less than 0.5 square kilometer. Okay. But it is not subject to soybean and high density urban. So that came to about 40 HRUs or the dominant HRUs that comprises of this 56 square kilometer watershed, 56.22 square kilometer watershed. These pie charts shows you before and after, okay? Meaning after threshold is applied and before it was applied actually. So you can see the pasture. So what are the land that got eliminated? The deciduous forest, which is 0.51, range 0.39. Because we told to not to eliminate, it's kept the soybean, fescue, range brush, riparian wetland, forested wetland, and so on and so forth actually. So a lot of them that are less than 0.5 square kilometer, what's got eliminated here actually. And the rest, the major land uses are pasture, forest, deciduous forest, low density, medium density, high density, and soybean.
Hey, Srini, there was a question about where is the acronyms table?
Acronym table is when you download the database, you will get it. But when you move your cursor, you are going to get that acronym fully expanded.
Okay, and I can see as you move your cursor over each one, it pops up as well.
Yep.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And this is the land use. You can get the what are the soils in this watershed. These are all the Surgo MU key ID. The soils we are using in this in Hawks, Oklahoma HAWQS are all Surgo soils. So that shows you the distribution of the Surgo soils and the slope classes actually. So there are 0 to 2%, 2 to 8%. None of the slopes are above 8%. So you can see that almost 99% of this watershed is between 0 and 2%. Okay. So if you agree with this, we can proceed. If you don't agree with this, you can say reset and redo this analysis again. So you can repeat this as long as you want until you are satisfied with what is your setup for hydrological response unit before you run the model. So once you're done that, you can say, let's go ahead and create a scenario. So in the scenario creation menu, that is, I'm going to leave the default. You can name anything you want. And you have the option to choose what weather data that you want to use. So that is a version 1 and version 2. This version 2 is the improved version. So let's say Prism, for example. So that means you can choose data from 1981 to 2020. Okay. You can choose the entire period, or you can choose any period within that actually. For example, I could choose, say, I want to run the model only for the last 10 or 11 years. So I could say 2020 to 2010 to 2020. Okay. Or you can click on the calendar and select your date. Okay. So you can choose any time period that you want to model. Or you can choose the NextRut data. Same thing, NextRut goes from 2005 to 2020. So depending on what data you want to use, you can use any of them actually. And you also have what do you call model setup period or warm-up period actually. It's up to you. Typically, I use 2 years on climate that is at least 800 millimeter or 900 millimeter and above per year. Almost like 40 inches, 35 to 40 inches. If the rainfall is much less, then I may use more like 3 to 5 years as a warm-up period actually, because it's a dry region. You need more time period to get your initial soil parameters, initialization of more model inputs by having this warm-up period or setup period. The model is running on a daily time step, and you could choose any version of the model. This is the 682 is the latest version. So that's what it's defaulted to. But let's say you built a model using 636 or 659, you can go back and run the model for any version of the model. And then you click on Save Changes. So that means I have created a model based on, for this watershed, for 40 HRUs for 11-year period, and with a 2-year warm-up period for using SWAT 682 version. Okay, so at this point, I can run that scenario, run the model. So it didn't take us, without my explanation, if I had to do this stuff, actually, it should not have taken you more than 2 to 3 minutes for you to set up and get to the screen and start running the model. So that's the benefit of the SWAT, HAWQS system platform. You can customize, okay? I want to go through some more explanation here. You can customize your SWAT inputs. You can customize your calibration data set. If this particular watershed is calibrated based on the calibration that I talked about before, okay, you will see this button showing it's active, and it shows you each of the parameter that was modified to calibrate your model. On groundwater table, HRU table, management input, and so on and so forth. Okay. If a watershed that you selected was not calibrated, you will not see this when it will say no parameter exists. Even if you had the model calibrated, you could come back and say, no, I don't want this to be calibrated. I want the raw data in order for you to do other analysis. You don't want to use the calibrated parameters. Okay. Then you can simply deactivate it. When you say inactive and save the change, and when you run the model, these changes will not be applied to your input data set. You will get the raw data as if it's coming from, if you developed your own model from a desktop exercise, for example. Okay. By default, this will be always active. Hope that's clear. Oh, by the way, where this calibration parameter is coming from, when we calibrated the Illinois River, this is a branch of an Illinois River, and the calibration location is right here, actually. At what HAWQS 12 location it was calibrated, so that you got a general idea that the parameter that was used in that watershed, and that parameters is transferred to this smaller subset of that watershed within the Illinois River. Okay. Also, you can change other inputs such as basin input data, for example. So here it has got, say, Hargrave is what the default method. I can change your ET method. If you don't like the Hargrave method, you want to use Priestley-Taylor appointment, you can change that now. Anything you change in any of the screen, runoff modification or nutrient cycling or any kind of channel parameters that you want to modify, anything you change, you click on save. Until you click save, that is not recorded, or that is not thing. If you just click the back button, that means we did not save any of the changes. You can change, but if you click the back button, it won't be saved. Actually, that way they're not modified, basically. Or let's say one of you were asking about the pesticides. Okay, I think I told you wrong. What we have is only fertilizer, not pesticide. We will add pesticide. I have the intention to do that. So we will add the pesticide where you will be able to, just like I'm going to show you the fertilizer, but it will be very similar to that. So you could go in here and edit any of the pesticide, like anhydrous ammonia. If the percentage of nitrogen here, what's specified is not correct, you can modify that. Actually, you can edit, click on edit, and go here and make the changes, and then save the change. And this fertilizer table will be what used in the modeling for your scenario. We will do the same thing for pesticide. We will list all the pesticide, all the parameters. Then you can come and add your own pesticide or modify one of the existing pesticide and apply that pesticide and simulate the organic compounds that you're interested in simulating. I thought we added it, but apparently we did not. So we will, so it'll come right here actually of editing inputs. Okay, same thing for urban data, for example. I'm not going to go through every one of them. I'm just hitting the highlights here, but you're welcome to browse and then later if you have questions, you're always welcome to bring it up. So in the urban data set, these are all the different urban classes. Remember the 4-letter class that you saw a while ago? That's what this here actually, urban high density, for example. Okay. In this, it shows you the various parameters. Again, if you're not sure what these various parameters are, you simply click on this. It'll show you all this description for these input parameters. Okay, this is the chapter that talks about the urban inputs in SWOT documentation. Okay, and if you want to make changes, let's say, for example, FIMP means fraction of impervious layer. We are saying in an urban high density, 60% are rooftop or parking lot or concrete surfaces, roads and things like that, actually impermeable layer. Okay, if that's not true or that's not correct in the watershed that you're modeling, you can simply come here, select it, and you can change this to, no, it's more like 0.8. I'm in New York or I'm in Austin or some big cities, thereby they should be more like 0.8 actually. Okay, you can change that and save it so that when you run the model, we will use 80% hydrology will be generated from the concrete surfaces and 20% of the hydrology will be generated from the open surfaces. Open mean grassland, where you have a soil and the percolation and the infiltration and runoff, all those things will be calculated based on typical land versus 80% would be simulated as a urban landscapes. Okay, so you can modify any of the inputs, either it's urban or fertilizer or any other input that you're interested in the modifying, you would be able to modify that actually. Moving on, I want to also show you that climate sensitivity. So this is where, I mean, this was developed some time ago actually, that those days the climate change is not a real word. So we didn't use climate change anywhere. I think we will keep it that way because who knows what will change next, but you can do climate change or climate sensitivity, climate variability, whatever that you want to do that actually. Let's say I want to run a scenario and I want to change the rainfall by 10%, increase or decrease for certain subbasins for certain months. You can do that actually. So I can say increase or decrease rainfall. Let's say I want to increase the rainfall by 5%. And I also increase the temperature by 1 degree, let's say. Okay. And do you want to apply to all subbasins on all months or select it? So I can select which watershed I want to apply. I want to only apply to this one, or I also want to apply to this one. And then I can say which month I want to apply. Do I want to apply only for March and April? So that means every day when there is a rainfall in the month of March, we'll automatically increase the rainfall by 10%. And every day the temperature will be also increased by 1 degree for that month. Okay, so you can run any kind of climate sensitivity or climate type of scenario analysis very quickly. So one other thing believe is that because of the climate change, the intensity of the storm is increasing. So you can change the rainfall amount, for example, what happens within a day and things like that. The number of days of rainfall may be shortened, but the amount of rain is more in a given day. So things like that, you'll be able to run various type of climate scenarios. Okay. The weather generator.
Yes. Question, I missed it from earlier from Josephus, and he may need to clarify some of it, but Josephus asked, is there an opportunity for the user to define the watershed? Is it deep or shallow watershed? Josephus, do you want to maybe explain that one a little bit more?
You mean
yeah, basically, most of those watersheds, sometimes you have the opportunity, for example, in SWAT to determine whether it is a deep watershed or if it is a shallow watershed. And I believe each might have a little bit of impact on the output of the model. So I just wanted to know whether you have an opportunity to choose that in the watershed.
When you say deep watershed or shallow watershed, what do you mean by deep and shallow? Because I know deep and shallow aquifers are there actually. What do you mean by deep and shallow watershed? Are you talking about the size of the watershed?
Yes, the size of the watershed, and sometimes some of those watershed, like maybe there have been a lot of sediment load in the watershed. And so like the watershed kind of a little bit more shallower. It's not like deep, narrow, like maybe a constructed type of watershed.
Okay, so all these watersheds are came from the NHT plus. The NHT plus is done at a 1 square mile resolution, approximately. So what we have done is that 1 square mile is too detailed to do some of this analysis. So we aggregated them to roughly about 8 square mile or 20 square kilometers.
Okay.
So 20 square kilometers. So you cannot change the pre-configured subbasin, either HAWQ12 or HAWQ14. But later I'm going to talk about that you would be able to download the data, including the GIS layer, and using the GIS layers, you can generate your own watershed if you want, using ArcSWAT or QSWAT, and do any analysis you want to do, actually. Right. So the intention of the HAWQS is to have pre-built data sets and pre-configured watersheds to quickly do the analysis, actually. And most of the regulatory or research projects, they use the HAWQ12 basin, and some uses HAWQ14 because the watershed sizes are smaller and things like that. But we have not seen a reason to go below HAWQ14 yet, but that could change in the future.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Srini, I think go ahead and finish the weather data section, and then maybe we'll take a 10-minute break once you're done with that.
Okay, will do. So the weather generator is another option that you can change on intensity of your rainfall, for example. So when I click on the weather generator, here you can say, what is the maximum half an hour rainfall intensity? Okay, so this is where you talk about the rainy season, you are getting more rain, but shorter duration. That means your intensity is increasing. So you can adjust your rainfall intensity that way. Is it increased by percentage or by number? All those different things you can do. Same thing for temperature. So all the weather variables you are allowed to modify and apply to specific month and specific subbasins and so on and so forth. Okay. So it's almost 10 o'clock now. Okay. So if you want, I can stop right here. Let's take a 10 minutes. You can stand up and stretch yourself and maybe take a potty break, and then we'll come back and continue at 10:15. Is that sounds good?
Sure, 10:15 sounds great.
Yep. So let's continue at 10:15. So maybe somebody can pause the recording in the meantime.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. So in addition to the customization of input that I talked about so far, you can also ask to print output like HRE. Typically, we do not print the HRE level output, meaning the field by field or form by form output, because not many people do the analysis, and also the file size get really huge and so on. That's why we don't do that actually. So here you have an option by selecting what variable that you want to print, for example. So right now it's selecting only hydrological parameter, water budget parameters. If you need any of the water quality, it's not automatically included in that actually. So you have to come here and select what variable that you need. In addition to that, you also need to select what location or what HRUs you want to print actually, in which subbasin, and within the which subbasin, whether you want only the urban landscapes or you want to look at the forest landscape. So those are all the kind of things that you can do by selecting your output. You can select up to 20 HRUs actually. Right now, that's a limitation in SWAT. 20 HRUs and 20 variables is a limitation in SWAT actually. So we can select that. Then later, let's say if you want to do some kind of hypothetical thing, like for example, one of the things that I was discussing recently with someone, and they said, oh, I know this land is degraded, this part of the region is degraded, thereby the curve number should be modified actually, because it should have higher curve number because the land is degraded, the vegetation is not the same, because when you look at the rangeland or grassland, after you do a field visit, you know whether they are in good condition or poor condition or average condition and so on and so forth. So one could come here and do some adjustments to curve number, for example. So you could select, okay, I need to really increase the curve number for this land because it's got some land degradation going on actually, let's say by 5%. And then you can say, I want to apply to a selected HRUs. Again, you have to select which subbasin that particular grassland or the rangeland may exist. And then you select for which land use, for which soil within that, and on what slope they are in. By doing that, you can change the curve number of that particular HRU and then study the impact of the degraded land, for example. Okay. Or you can change curve number for other reasons. I'm just throwing that as one example of why someone want to change curve number for a specific HRUs. Okay. Again, I'm not doing any of this stuff. These are all these options to do all kinds of scenario analysis, actually. Later, I'm going to come back and do 2 scenarios and then explain that more. You can also change your routing method, sediment routing method. In SWAT, we have 5 different equations to choose from, so that you can choose any one of these equations based on, once you understand, again, I would highly recommend reading this chapter before you choose which is more appropriate for your given watershed, actually. Okay, and then you can select whether you want to do it for all subbasins or selected subbasins. So later in the workshop, I'm going to show you how to change some ag management parameters and the point source as 2 scenarios. So I'm not going to spend more time now. We'll be coming to that later, but you get the general idea, the parameters or the input, what you can modify in HAWQS. However, you can also have the option to download this entire model onto your desktop, and using Swat Editor, you can do any number of editing, any variable, anything that you want to edit and modify, you'll be able to do that in Swat Editor also. Okay. So with that, let's say you are ready to run the model. You can click on Run Scenario. So we are running the default scenario right now, this default scenario. So run. So under the run scenario, you have, it's asking you, it says roughly 4 minutes. It depends on how many number of users, how big of a project running and things like that. So when you click on Write SWAT tables, this is what allows you to download the project and do it offline in a using the SWAT Editor program. Okay. If you don't want to process the output, some people say, just run the model. I want to analyze it outside because I'm doing other thing and whatnot, or they are trying to import this into other models or other analysis. So you can skip processing them, thereby it saves time, obviously. Okay. When you finish, you can also click to run and send an email to you so that you don't have to wait on the screen to get the response and things like that. Since it's a small watershed, it's going to run quickly. So I'm not going to check the email option, but you can do that actually. So I'm going to say run my scenario. So it gives you the verbose information, exactly what it's doing right now. And once it's finished writing the input file, because now it's doing the SWAT editor table creation, then it's run the model. Now it's collecting the output statistics, and you'll be able to start visualizing the results in another minute or so. By the way, it also zips up the entire folder for you so that when you want to download your data, you'll be able to download just the ASCII input file that model uses or the entire project. So you have 2 options how you want to download your data. Okay, so everything's done. Now you can see there is a 3rd tab is enabled when it is successfully completed running the model. You can analyze your output data. Okay, so it also gives you always information when that was run last and how long it took to run the model, things like that actually. And here is an option to download your scenario. Okay, scenario means just the raw SWAT input output files only. Okay, not all the other associated files in that. To run your SWAT editor offline and things like that, this is the raw files. Okay. When I click on, oh, by the way, those who are familiar with SWAT, in OK-HAWQS and QSWAT and Swat Editor, you can also run what we call Swat Check. Swat Check is a diagnostic tool, not a calibration tool, to visualize, to look at 30,000 foot view of your watershed. Okay, what is the total rainfall, annual rainfall? How much of that is runoff? How much of that is sediment and things like that? It gives you all the different information, not by subbasin, not by HRU, but looking at the entire simulation for the entire watershed. Okay. So when you click here, and again, if you want to read more about the SWAT check, you simply click on it. It'll take you to the section where it talks about all the SWAT check is what SWAT check is all about. So click run SWAT check. So it's very quick. So we ran the model 682 version, 11 year of model simulation, 2 year of warm-up period, 40 HRUs, 2 watersheds, or 2 subbasins. And the watershed size we model is about 56.22 square kilometer. It's run on a daily time stub with the measured data, measured rainfall. The next is hydrology. So it shows you how much is the 10-year or 11-year of rainfall, average rainfall. That's 1,283 millimeter. Okay, so that's almost like 44, 45 inches basically. And of that, how much is the evapotranspiration? How much is the potential evapotranspiration? Okay, so that means 62.3% of your rainfall is ET. So the ratio between ET to precipitation, 799 divided by 1283 is 62.3. How much of this is runoff? 366, lateral is 20, and return flow is 94. Okay, it's all in millimeter. All units are in millimeter, average annual values. So that means 37% of your rainfall is stream flow. Of that 37%, 24% is base flow, and 76% is high flow. High flow means direct runoff. And how much is recharge and how much is percolation? There are a few other statistics here actually. So that gives you a very quick snapshot of your water budget, hydrological budget for your specific watershed. Okay. You can use these numbers and check literature value, expert opinion, or other modeling reports so that you can do anecdotal evidences to check and see if those number looks reasonable. If something is not reasonable, then we know something is wrong in the input, then that means we need to go back and correct that input to making sure we are able to capture the various physical process that's happening in the watershed. Okay. Same thing. Oh, by the way, you can also be able to look at the same data that I'm showing you in monthly, average monthly. So if you're running the model for 11 years, this is the 11-year average of month of January, February, March, April, and so on. How much is rain, how much is snow, how much is runoff, lateral, stream flow, evapotranspiration, sediment, and so on, PET, and so on. Okay. And anytime you see a table like this, you can simply grab them, copy and paste in Excel. Everything will be fall in place. You don't have to format the data. Okay, they are all already formatted, ready to go for Excel. By the way, this shows you what is the base flow, right? The base flow is around 24% here actually. So if you remember right, this is a watershed in the northeast of Oklahoma and Arkansas border there actually. We have published a paper in 1993 or 94. In that paper, we have shown US-wide what is the base flow contribution. Okay, so this shows you the red or darker colors is less base flow contribution, lighter colors is more base flow contribution. Okay, so if you look at, I mean, if I'm looking at right, I think this is right somewhere here actually. somewhere right here is between Oklahoma and Arkansas border is this particular watershed, which is this gray type of shade here actually, which is 22 to 29%. And we are finding here is 24% here actually. So we are somewhat on the same ballpark figure as what's estimated from the literature, for example. So this is what I was talking about. There are several ways for you to check your model output against other existing literature or existing experts' opinion and other reports to figure out how well the model is producing. Okay. Then we can look at the sediment. So when you click on the sediment, it shows you where the sediment is coming from the landscape. Okay, from the HRU, the amount of sediment is 1.37 tons per hectare. So 1.37 mg, capital M means megagram. Megagram is tons per hectare. Of that 1.37 tons, 0.6 is the in-stream. But there is a negative. That means we are depositing 0.63 tons in the channel. Okay, this is what's landscape erosion, but the landscape erosion getting deposited in the channel. If this number is positive, then that means you have erosion from the channel also. Okay. So then we also go through the nitrogen cycle, the soluble nitrogen, organic nitrogen, the different forms of nitrogen like nitrate, organic, and fresh, and ammonia, and so on. Same thing for phosphorus. I can go through this in more detail if there is an interest, but I'm just going through right now. But if you have specific questions on any of them, I can stop and explain more detail. So this is the plant growth that shows you what is the average biomass, average yield, how much nitrogen was removed when you harvest your crop, how much you're removing by the crop, how much is going into the soil, and how much left in the soil, and so on and so forth. So how much fertilizer applied, and so on. And some of the stress factors, nitrogen, phosphorus, temperature, and so on. And the next is losses. How much nitrogen is lost? How much phosphorus is lost? The total nitrogen loss is about 15.9 kilograms per hectare. Of that, 6 kilograms is organic. Nitrogen and runoff is about 2.8 kilograms. Nitrogen leached to groundwater is 6.6. And nitrogen, the lateral flow, nitrogen coming from the groundwater, all those different forms of nitrogen is shown here. Same thing for phosphorus. Again, this is for the entire watershed, for all the years of simulation, average annual value. Later, I'll be able to show you by month, by day, we can do the same analysis. Here's for the phosphorus. How much is the total phosphorus? How much is organic? How much is a soluble and soluble ratio, and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to look at the results by land use summary, meaning all the major land uses in the watershed, okay, like we had soybean, forest, pasture, and urban. In SWAT, urban are modeled in two forms of urban. Remember, I told you the impervious and pervious. Impervious means the rooftops, parking lot, buildings, okay? And then open spaces simulated as Bermuda grass, okay? So that's why you see, whenever you see a B or M, that's basically an urban land use, but for the open space. What is the landscape or simulated as a Bermuda landscape, okay? So there are 11 square kilometers of urban, and forest, pasture is the dominant, and soybean cropland, okay? So what current number was used on an average? What's your water holding capacity, LS factor, how much is the rainfall, how much is the runoff? So you can see the different land use, the runoff is totally different. Okay, the forest one has got very less runoff, but it's got the most groundwater contribution, which is expected because water goes into the soil and then slowly get released over the next month or two, whereas the water from a agriculture cropland is very little groundwater contribution. Okay, here is the evapotranspiration. Again, those are also different. Some of them are short, 3-4 months crop, whereas forest is throughout the year. So there is a significant difference there. Here is the sediment. Okay. So again, the sediment is much low, even though your LS factor, the slope length factor is very high. Your sediment is very low here because it's a forest land and compared to urban or agricultural land. And here is the nitrate contribution, organic nitrogen, the biomass, and crop yield. Okay. And in every one of this page, there is always some warning message. That is just a message or warning information to get your attention and asking you to review that input. Actually, that doesn't mean something's wrong with your input. That doesn't mean the results are wrong. We are catching this in generality, looking at the big picture, just making sure those information looks reasonable for you. You can also look at the in-stream process, point sources, and reservoirs. Okay. I think there is not a point source in this watershed. Maybe I need to rethink the point source scenario, but we will see. Or we can introduce a point source. It's nothing wrong with that, actually. We'll look into that. Okay. So that shows you how much is the flow in this watershed. It's roughly 1 cubic meter per second per day. And then the sediment is about 13,000 tons per year. And this nitrogen is about 80,000 kilograms per year. And phosphorus is about 25,000 kilograms per year. Okay. If you had a point source here, it'll show you what percentage of that total load is coming from point source. Okay. I don't think this watershed has got any reservoirs, so that's not anything here either. Okay. Otherwise, you will see the reservoir impact. Okay. Let me get back from the SWAT check, going back to the default output data. Now that we saw the 30,000 foot overview, now we can drill down to the individual sub-watersheds and things of that nature. So I want to plot the graphs. So I can select what output I want. Actually, do I want output from HRU, subbasin, or reach? Let's say I want to look at the reach output. And I want to look at what's happening at the watershed outlet. Then I can simply click on that. So I know this is the location I'm looking at the output. I can look at anywhere, actually. I can look at it here if you want to, or I can. So any location you want, you can select that. And what variable you want to plot. Yes.
There was a question just a second ago. So before you got too much further, wanted to interject. Sure. There was a question that if sediment is negative, that means you are losing sediment.
No, the sediments are getting settled, meaning whatever the sediment that's coming from the landscape is getting settled into the channel, into the riverbed actually. If that number is positive, that means there is a channel erosion is happening. If it is a negative, that means we are dropping sediment into the channel or into the stream bed. Great.
There's also a second question about if there's no hydraulic data available from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, are there any default settings for lakes?
Yeah, we have incorporated all the major ponds and reservoirs in the HAWQS database, Oklahoma HAWQS database. However, so that means the lake parameters are already parameterized for that actually. But however, if that is not correct, or if you want to, sometimes you want to run a scenario with adding a new pond or a new dams and things like that, then you can do yourself those new parameters actually. But there'll be always some default parameters for all the existing ones. Yes.
Great. Thanks, Srini.
Okay. Thank you. So let's say you want to look at flow. Okay. You can say flow. And also you want to look at sediment transported. Okay. And you want to add as a new axis. So you don't want to put the flow and sediment on the same axis. Or you want to look at other things like nitrogen, organic phosphorus, nitrate, nitrite, ammonia, chlorophyll, dissolved oxygen, pesticides, all those kind of things. You can look at any one of them. Let's say you want to look at total nitrogen and total phosphorus. I want to make this another axis actually. And total phosphorus, same thing, another axis. So you can have up to 4 axes here. Okay. And then you can select what statistics you want to perform. You want to perform low duration curve, meaning probability of exceedance curve, or you want to look at just the mean value, monthly mean value, or you want to look at the maximum, the minimum, the box plots, or the daily values. Let's say we want to look at the monthly mean for time being actually, and then click get chart. So you'll have the output. So left side axis, y-axis is flow in cubic meter per second. The right side is sediment, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Okay. Let's say you want to change this. I'm not a metric guy. All the inputs goes to SWAT is always metric system, meters, kilometer square, hectares, and whatnot. Whereas the output can be requested both in metric or English system. Okay, English units. So if you want the English units, just change it. If you want to make that permanent change, you can go to your account setting and change it there so that anytime you don't have to do it every map or every graph. So it will automatically do that for you actually. But for a specific one you want to do it, you can come here and change it. And you say, get my chart. So now everything will be in pounds, tons, English tons, or cubic feet per second, and so on. So you can change the unit very quickly. Also, any graph that you see here, you can simply export that. You can make that as a full screen. You can print it. You can download as an image or PDF, or you can download it as a comma delimited file or Excel file. So the data that you see here can be exported as a Excel file or comma delimited file. Okay. And you can also zoom in and out actually. So I can say, oh, I want to zoom in. So you simply click on it, draw a time period that you're interested in. So you'll zoom into that time period only. And as you move your cursor, it'll give you the actual data in each one of them, along with the variable. And let's say you want to temporarily hide phosphorus. You simply click on phosphorus. Let's be or nitrogen, for example. So now you're looking at just flow and sediment only. So you'll be able to do that. If you want to reset, because I zoomed in here, if you want to reset it, I can look at the long term. And if you don't like, I mean, for some reason, the differences in low and high is too high. So instead of linear scale, you want to go log scale. You can also make that as a log scale. So you can customize many different ways what and how you want to display the results and so on and so forth. You want to look at flow and nitrogen, for example. Or you want to look at sediment and phosphorus. So you can look at sediment and phosphorus. Hope you get the hang of this stuff. Actually, let's say you really don't want to do the average. You want to look at the low duration curve. You all know what the low duration curve is, probability of exceedance curve. So you can say get chart, and you'll be able to see that very quickly, the low duration curve. So I want to look at only the sediment here. So that shows you the sediment. So you can see 20% of the time, the sediment is going to be more than 1 tons per hectare. Sorry, not it's total 1 tons, not hectare, it's 1 tons. Okay, 10% of the time is going to be 10 tons per hectare. So these are all the high flow sedimentation that's coming in because of the high rainfall event and whatnot. If you want to look at the same time the flow, what flow at 10% actually that's causing this 10 tons per hectare, you can look at the same. So it's almost 34 cubic feet per second. So the top 10% of the flow is 34 cubic feet per second or above, all the way to 1,800 cubic feet and so on. Or if you want to look at the nitrogen, I don't want the flow, so you can just look at the nitrogen. The thing that comes to zero, that's because you don't have flow. Only you have flow for up to 25 to 30% of the year. The remaining time it's a dry creek. It's a small creek, as you saw that actually. So there are a lot of information you can able to extract from here that could be used in your TMDL report or watershed report or anything like that actually very quickly. Remember, one other thing I wanted to, this is a watershed, it's a tributary of Illinois River. We may not have a rain gauge, or sorry, not rain gauge, the USGS gauge right on this river. We are using the Illinois River calibration. We had about 5 other gauges in the Illinois River, not on exactly on the Sagar Creek. So we are using the parameter that is used to calibrate for the adjacent watershed onto this watershed in its calibration. Okay. So we may have calibrated the downstream of the Sagar Creek, not the Sagar Creek itself, because it is the entire Illinois Creek is what's being calibrated, not this specific subbasin, because we didn't have the data at this location. I hope that's clear. Actually, if not, please jump in anytime. Same thing you can do with the subbasin output. Subbasin output means for each subbasin, okay, for a specific subbasin. Reach output means it's a cumulative output. As you're looking at the outlet, that includes the runoff and sediment generated here and here. If I'm looking at the subbasin output, I'm looking at only that specific subbasin. What is generated in that subbasin only, not across 2 subbasins. Okay, same thing, HRE means specific HRE. So let's look at the maps. So again, here you can select, do you want to look at the reach output or subbasin? Maybe subbasin output is more appropriate here actually. And what statistics? I want to look at average annual, let's say, average annual output. What parameters you want to look at? Let's say I want to look at sediment yield. Okay. And then again, you can change your units and say, get my map. So it will give you the map of sediment. So this subbasin has got a higher sediment than the one on the upstream actually. So you can say it's 0.66 tons versus 0.58 tons. So if you move your cursor, it will tell you the value. And if you want to change colors, you can change color very easily actually. So you want to say the dark color, I want that to be more reddish. And the median color should be more in the greenish. And the low color should be somewhere in blue. You can change and it'll automatically change your color scheme. You can zoom in here. Okay. If you want, and then you can export this same way. And if you have multiple scenarios, you'll be able to do the comparison, which I'll show it to you in the next, once I create a scenario, additional scenarios. Any questions on the output analysis? So we went through the output data. In here, we looked at the SWAT check. We looked at the chart, how to chart like flow duration curve, average annual, and so on and so forth. And then monthly values. Then we also able to plot maps.
Srini, there is a question.
Yes.
It was about some of the calibration statistics. So the question is, how much confidence do you have for the water quality results? And are there any calibration statistics available for all results, including sediment and nutrients?
Not, I mean, we have done that work for the US, for the entire US, the HAWQS system that we developed on selected places. But for Oklahoma, we have not done any specific watersheds within Oklahoma for this exercise yet. This is something Oklahoma Conservation Commission is very much interested in that, and they are wanting to continue this work, not only incorporating new features, but also wanting to add the water quality calibration moving forward. So this is not a product that's completely done. It's going to be continue to improve on. And in order to improve on, we also need your help. If you have done a calibration already and you know what parameter works, you are welcome to share with us. This is a community-based modeling system, so everybody can participate, everybody can benefit from others' work, actually, so that we don't have to repeat that. The main idea of the HAWQS itself is sharing data and models across the platform so that everybody can benefit that model, rather than just one group or one agency may have done that model for a specific purpose. So more to come on the water quality calibration. We'll be continuing to prioritize it. It may not be every watershed, because not every watershed has got observed data set. So we will look at what's available and then prioritize it and make that available as those sites are calibrated. Always you can go to the help side and able to, on the help section, you'll be able to know what's calibrated and how, and what are some of the statistics, what parameters was used. All those things will be there for you to either accept or not accept. For example, you may want to think that you can do a better job, you may want to download and want to play with that. You're welcome to do that too.
Thanks, Srini.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments before I jump into the scenario? That's basically the HAWQS. The general fundamental on the HAWQS is what I just demonstrated so far, actually. Now I'm going to go into a scenario analysis, just show you how to change land use or how to change land management in agricultural, and then maybe show you one on point source. Okay. So if you go to customize SWOT inputs, there is general parameters, then operation management, right? So under the general parameters, again, you select for which subbasin you want to make changes and which land use within that subbasin, excuse me, let's say soybean, and which soil and what slope. And get the data. It will give you the information on what are the initial values. Okay, so you may come back and say, okay, I know this watershed is contour cultivated, or this water has got good residue, or this watershed may have strip cultivation, whatever it may be, actually, or terraces and things like that. So that makes me to change my universal soil loss equation from 1 to 0.6. You can make changes. That actually, once you make the changes, you simply say save changes. And whatever changes you made, you will see whether you want to apply that to all HRU or specific HRUs. So it can be on this watershed only, or it can be on both watersheds if you want to, or many other watersheds if you have more watersheds here. And then for a specific land use, specific soil, maybe all soils in this watershed where the slope is above 2%, there is a terrace or there is a contour cultivation and so on. And you can say apply the change. So once you save that, you should, try selecting. What today, not right. Okay, let me redo it one more time quickly. Okay. Interesting. All this happens when you're doing demo, right? So, okay. I will look into this to making sure why it says there is the error, but I'm not seeing any error. No, still got an error. Okay, I'll find out and I'll let you know. So the idea, you see the idea of what you can do if you're applying some kind of a best management practices and where you have to adjust your current number, either current number or change the USLE P equation and things like that. You can able to do that in this menu here.
Hey, Srini, somebody pointed out that it says no crop growing and asked
No,
if that could be an issue.
No, that's only comes into play if you're having a permanent vegetation cover like forest or rangeland and pasture land and things like that, or if you are growing something across the year, actually, meaning winter wheat, for example, you may plant in say October and then harvest next June or next May or something like that. So that when you're crossing a calendar year, then only you need to make sure what's the initial land cover actually. But in this case, it's not. I don't think that's the case. That's the reason. I'll look into that. I think something must be simple. I'm doing something stupid mistakes here, but I'll find out. Then there is an operation management. So operation management is where you have the day-to-day operation of that specific HRU actually. So again, let me select the basin, land use, soil, and slope. So this shows you you're planting the soybean and you're applying some fertilizer and then you're harvesting the operation. That's a minimum operation that you get, but you can also customize it with your own information. For example, I'm going to completely remove this and I'm going to add a new one, let's say, okay? So I'm going to say, I'm going to modify, so I can, anytime you see an icon like this, that means you can edit that operation. Or you can delete this operation and you can add your own operations. You can also import, export. So meaning you can export this whole data onto a local hard drive and make any changes, then re-import them back to your HAWQS system. So that is an option to do that also actually. So let's say I want to modify this. So this is the plant at the beginning of the season. Instead of soybean, I want to change to some other land use. For example, I want to have sorghum and peanuts here actually, or I want to go back to corn. So I can simply go to corn. So here you can see there are lots of rotations here. So, okay, I want to do simply corn field here actually. Okay, if you know your heat units, you can add, or it will automatically calculate that for you. So click OK. So I just changed from soybean to corn. You can have even rotation, 2-year rotation, corn soybean rotation or corn cotton rotation, whatever that may be going on in that watershed. Then I say I want to change the fertilizer. Okay, right now it's applying auto fertilizer, elemental nitrogen. If I want different fertilizer, I can choose the fertilizer here. Remember the fertilizer database I showed you before? You'll be able to choose the fertilizer here. Okay. And whether it's ammonia or whatever that or urea you're applying, whatever that you're applying, you can choose that. And you can also tell at what time you want to apply that fertilizer, how much maximum you want to apply, and things like that. So once you're done that, then you're going to harvest. Let's say I want to add a new operation. Okay. And I want that to be my first operation because I'm going to till the soil actually. Let's say I want to till the soil. So I can go here, tillage operation. And I can select what tillage I want to apply. Let's say I want to do a generic no-till. So you can do a no-till or conservation till, conventional tillage, or if you know the exact tillage, you can also choose that. Okay. And if you have to override your curve number, you can do that. Then you select OK. So I'm going to do this at a week before the planting. Okay. So it automatically changes the stuff actually. So here is your tillage operation at 0.1. And then you can add another operation if you want. Let's say I want to apply pesticide or herbicides. Okay. So I can say that's going to happen even before the planting. Let's say that's 05. And I want to do, I want to select pesticide application. And you can select the pesticide. Let's say I'm going to do an atrazine to remove weeds. So atrazine. No, sometimes the trade name is different than the technical name here actually. So let me. Okay, I don't know if this is changed to something here like this. So I need to find out. I thought I had a specific name called atrazine pesticide. Then you have to decide how much you're applying. Let's say I'm applying 2 kilograms per hectare. And you can also decide whether you're applying on the top of the soil or underneath the soil, actually. So you can look at the incorporation and then click OK. So like this, you can customize your applications, right? As much as you want. Then you can decide whether you want to apply all this stuff to all HRUs or specific HRUs. Same thing actually here. I want to apply to only the soybean field, in all soils, or all slopes, in all subbasins. Okay, so I'm applying for the entire watershed. I'm converting from soybean to corn with the management I just talked about actually. And you can simply say save this. So it saves changed. So you'll see at the bottom of this, you'll see what you changed. So this is recorded as part of your project management so that a year from now or 3 months from now, if you want to come back and look at your project, you'll know what are the changes that's applied to this watershed. What scenario was created, what input, output were changed, and all those stuff actually. Once you've done that, you could come back. I made a mistake. Okay. I should have created a new scenario and then see, I should have copied the settings and added a new scenario. So now what happened is I override my default scenario with the corn instead of soybean. That's okay. We'll do some other scenario. So I should have come here and created a new scenario from my default. So it makes a copy of all your default and make changes to the default. That's what I should have done instead of coming here and start making changes and things like that. But right now, that's fine. So I'll add another scenario. So you can click here and you say rerun. So that means you change the soybean to corn. Soybean is not a big factor in this watershed because you're talking about 0.5 square kilometer only. So it's a very small, 1% of the land is soybean in this watershed. But you can imagine this, if this is a large watershed with a lot of ag land, and you have to change from one land use to another land use, like soybean to corn, or different rotations and things like that, it can have a significant impact on your modeling results. Okay. So rerun the scenario. Again, if you need the table, you can ask for it. I'm not going to ask for it now. I'm just going to say run. Let's finish running, calculating the statistics. So once it's done, now we should be able to look at the impact of the change in input, especially the pesticides we ran and the no-till, and then also the impact of corn, for example. Okay, so now I can run Swat Check quickly. Hydrology is not going to change significantly, so they'll be all pretty much the same. But the sediment may differ actually. So previously it was, I think, 1.38 or something. Now it's only 1.35. And if you want to look at the land use summary, previously it was soybean, now it's all corn. And you can see soybean had about almost 14 tons per hectare. Corn has got about 12.7 tons per hectare. And corn yield is about almost 10 tons per hectare, which is pretty good yield when considering that's almost 200 bushels actually, bushels per acre. Okay, so you can look at that, and you can also look at you can chart it, you can map it, just like I showed you before. So you can use, if I had the baseline scenario, I can even put side-by-side comparison of the two output actually. Okay. Since I have not done that, I could not be able to show you the comparison maps. Let me go and create a new scenario. So this time I'm going to say point source example. I'm going to use the same weather data so that I can able to be comparable. I don't want to create a new data set. By the way, in the future, we may also add climate change models here. So when you come here to choose your model, it's not only using the historical climate, but also future climate. That way you can run next 100 years. What is the weather? What the impact of the weather on the current land use and stuff like that. So you'll be able to do that. Okay, so it changes. And now I'm going to, in the customization, I want to go to the point source. Okay, here you can have, I mean, again, there is a chapter here that explains the detailed inputs and whatnot. And you can also mix, like, for example, you can have a constant or daily or monthly or annual, meaning in one subbasin, you may have a constant, meaning every day, how much is the point source load, for example. Or you can have, if you know the daily values of how much the point source is putting out, actually, the wastewater treatment plant or industry pollution or whatever the source may be, or it could be monthly or annual. So depending on your availability of the data, you can choose that actually. So I'm going to take the constant sample. I'm going to download that data. So when I click on it, it already downloaded it here. So I can open that file in an Excel. Okay. So by default, in this watershed, there is not a point source here actually. Okay. So if you want to, I can add point source values. I do provide the subbasin number. Let's say there are 2, right? That's the scenario. So I need to know which subbasin I'm going to put a point source. Let's say I want to put the point source on this subbasin here. So I just simply take that value, go to the Excel, type that value there, and I can say how much is the flow. Again, you need to know the units. So that's where the SWAT documentation will help you. The SWAT accepts only metric units. So let's say you want to put like a, I don't know, 500,000 gallons per day is what the new permit is. So you can take that number and convert that into meter cube per day, basically, actually. So what the quickest way to do that would be, I can just take million MGD to meter cube per day. Let's say I want to .5 million gallon MGD, so that's equal to 273 meter cube per day. So I simply copy that file, copy that value, and I simply put it here actually. Okay. And if there is a sediment, you can also add that sediment. Let's say it produces about, I don't know, 5 tons per. I don't have the actual value. I'm just making it up at this point. But hopefully you'll have that information that you will be able to incorporate that actually. Same thing for organic nitrogen, organic phosphorus. Let's say you have adding about 10 kilograms per day, and let's say 2 kilograms in organic phosphorus, and maybe 50 in nitrate. And I don't have ammonia, I don't need to put that information. Mineral phosphorus, let's say I'm putting about 3. The rest, if you have the information like bacteria, pesticide, dissolved oxygen, carbonaceous BOD, and things like that, you can add them. Otherwise, you can simply put that information, save it, okay, close it, and in your go to my next screen. Okay, I need to move it. Okay. So here's the one that I just downloaded, right? Okay, I made the modification. You need to zip it up actually. Okay, I need to go ahead and zip this file. Okay, I just zipped it up. Now I would be able to simply go here in my point source and I drop that file actually. The file that I created, you can drag and drop. So I go back here, drag this file and drop it here. So I have uploaded the data of point source for one watershed or one subbasin there actually. So like this, you can add as many subbasins as you want. If it is a constant, you can put it. If it is a daily, you can download and do the same thing. So we have a template here. If this watershed already had a point source, you will, when you download it, you will also download the data for that watershed. Then you can modify from that actually. Let's say if somebody has added additional permit, or if they have asked for increase in water quality or increase in water quantity, all those things can be added there actually. And then re-uploaded that file, just like what I did, drag and drop them actually. Okay. So once it's done, I can go back and I can say run my scenario. So all I did was in this scenario is it's the same as previous scenario, except I added a point source. And I say run. I don't need to do this. I say run. Oops, what did I do wrong? Something wrong with my CSV. Okay. Let me go back and see if oh, I think I need to make sure. First of all, it doesn't know how to interpret this stuff. It needs to be a number. Okay. And I need to put zeros probably on this rest of them actually. So let me open this file in Excel again. Yeah, see, it's rounded off to 0 instead of the actual number. So I want to go and put that back again. No, not that one. So we applied on this quarter, this subbasin. Okay. Change the format to number. Okay, so that it will retain that instead of truncating to the exponential form. And I'm going to put zeros for the one that I don't have so that it doesn't think it's a blank. Okay, that should be one more. That's it. Okay. So save again. Close. Let me open in a Notepad Plus just to make sure the data is correct this time. Yep. Okay. Let me delete this file. Re-zip this file. Okay, I'm going to go back. Closure custom download is below. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just drop the new one here. Okay, and now I go back and say run. Yep, no, it's ran just fine. So that was the error because the subbasin number got truncated. That's why it crashed. So you can see how quickly we could run a scenario, whether it's a point source scenario or land use change scenario and whatnot, actually. So now you can come back here. And if you want to run Swat Check, you can do that. Nothing is going to change because it's same as previously. The only thing that would have changed is we added some point source. So you can see what has done actually. So the point source is 0.032 cubic meter per second, which is almost 3% of the watershed, sorry, 3% of the flow. And the sediment, we added some actually, that's almost 14%. And the nitrogen and phosphorus is about 24 and 8% or 25 and 8%, for example. So that gives you, by adding this point source, what is the contribution of the point source to the non-point source actually. So this is all the, this is the total, and this is the point source, and this is the percentage of the point source. The rest is all non-point source. Does it make sense? A quick analysis, a quick scenario. Then
Now there's a question, Srini.
Yep.
Does HAWQS consider a point source location in the subbasin?
not within the subbasin. It's going to always add to the head of the subbasin, the upstream portion of the subbasin. And if you have more than one point source, you have to aggregate it and drop it as one file actually, so that you have that, because our subbasin sizes are very, very small, not even a mile or whatnot actually. So it's not going to have, the routing is not going to change if you have 2 point source within short distance, for example. You can aggregate them and drop them as one point source.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Srini.
Yeah. So let's say if you want to do output chart, you can simply select that. And here you can see if you run up to 3 scenarios, you can be able to compare between the scenarios. So this is, here is my default. Let's say I want to do the reach output, and I want to look at the watershed outlet. Let's say I want to look at flow, sediment concentration, maybe in a different axis. And if I want to look at things like nitrogen, phosphorus. So the only difference between the two is the point source. Okay. And I want to look at the average value here and get my chart. Oh, I also want to compare that with my default scenario. Okay. So once I selected that, if you had another scenario, you can also select that scenario. So multiple scenarios. So I get chart. So that means I'm looking at 4 variables from 2 different models, the model current model and the default model that I ran before. So I get my chart. So that'll give you all the information. Here's a point source scenario, and this is a default scenario. I know it's a lot of lines here actually, so I'm going to remove all this stuff. So if you want to look at only flow, so that is the flow between the two. There's not much difference here. You can see the flow is almost the same. The contribution from the point source is only less than 3% actually. Let's say I want to look at the sediment concentration, for example. So you can see the difference in sediment concentration. Again, not very big because sediment was not that big from a point source. Okay. However, if you want to look at something like total nitrogen, not much either. Total phosphorus, let's say total phosphorus. Yeah, none of them has got a significant differences. But now let me go back to different type of statistics. Let's say low duration curve and get the data. Okay. So here is your Let me zoom in and see if there is any difference here between the two. Nope, it's almost the same. There's not much difference. The amount what you have is very, very small. Yeah, they are almost identical there actually. There's not much difference. I mean, there is a small slight difference. It's not like 17,470 versus 480 because we said 10 kilograms per day, right? So that's what you're looking at actually, 10 kilograms per day. So that difference is not significant in this graph here actually. Yeah, not much difference. Okay, I know it's hypothetical stuff. And same way, you can also do the mapping. Actually, if you want to do the mapping, again, as an example, it may not be the right example because we're looking at subbasin. Let's say average annual. You can look at things like water yield, and you can compare with other scenarios, and you can say get the map. So it should be able to show you what is for the point source, what is for the default, and what is the difference between these two. That if you subtract one map to the another map, or what is the percentage of change. So it will give you all those information here actually. Here the difference is so small, it's not even worth looking at actually, but just to want to show you the features available within HAWQS in terms of comparing different scenarios. Any questions?
Any questions so far?
I think I want to stop and maybe open up for more discussion rather than, because as you start experiencing, as you start working with that, I know a lot of you already asked for an account, so we will be approving them actually, and you'll have able to access this. And I'm sure you'll be looking for more things to compare and contrast and things like that. I can go back to one of the other thing I did. Was it on this watershed? No, that was.
I got one question offline.
Yes.
Asking about the recording and wanted to say that yes, we are recording it obviously, and it'll be available after the training. It may be a few weeks. We're going to try to get the shoot the transcription of it done. So once we get that done, then we'll put it out there.
Yeah, we'll make that available on the HAWQS website, but also it may be available in other websites also actually as part of the webinar. This is another watershed I was doing a while ago actually. So you can see in this watershed we have some ponds. So it shows you clearly those pond location. This is the NRCS Cobb Creek site, and here's another one pond. And here's a pond here actually. So it'll give you an idea what are some other ponds that got incorporated in the modeling here, for example. Okay, Oklahoma no name, that's a number next to that. So whatever information we have, you'll get that information here also actually. So I think in this particular watershed, this is close to the, here is Oklahoma City, so it's west of Oklahoma City, just to get a rough idea where this watershed is located, Cobb Creek. I think I did run few scenarios. I think I ran a grazing scenario, if you allow the animal to graze the landscapes, a fertilizer scenario, changing fertilizer input, and a default scenario. So here, if I want to do the comparison map, for example, the one I was talking about actually, so I will be able to take, let's say I want to compare that with the grazing. Okay, so I should be able to do that. Oops. Let's say I want to look at things like sediment yield or nitrogen or phosphorus, let's say phosphorus, and get a map. So you'll be able to see the differences here actually. So this is the organic phosphorus under default, under the grazing conditions. Then you can also see the difference of the changes and things like that. Actually, again, not much here. There's about 3.5% change. Here is about 5.6% change from the baseline. Here is 8.46% and so on. Okay. Then you can change the color schemes and see them, and you can also print them out individually or as a whole. All of them, you'll be able to compare them. I'll stop here and maybe engage in more question and answer so that our ideas or other things more for brainstorming. I know we still have quite a few people after 2.5 hours, so we don't want to lose them too much after lunch.
Right. Well, we've seen and learned and heard a lot this morning. And I know probably lots of questions will arise as you get in and begin using the OK-HAWQS model. But based on what you've seen so far, do you have any questions or suggestions for things that you would like to see or anything like that?
So chime in on any other type of workshops that will be more useful to you, like real case studies or maybe a workshop on SWAT and things like that, actually. So for those of you who may not be familiar with SWAT and things like that. Hopefully quite a bunch.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions?
I'm not seeing any in the chat, Srini.
Okay.
I guess any final aspects that you want to cover today, and I guess final chance for questions from the group if you have any.
Greg or Brad, do you all have anything else you want me to add here, or do you have a thing that you want to discuss?
I'm good, Serini. I think it's probably getting a little bit long for folks at this point in time, and unless Brad has something to add.
I don't have anything to add other than I'll put my email address in the chat box, and anybody that has questions, comments, suggestions, anything like that, get in touch with me or contact HAWQS administrators.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I might do, Kevin, is just take a moment to kind of wrap something up, at least from Conservation Commission's perspective, and just kind of let you all know that our Brad and I were at a training down in Region 6, a modeling training a couple of years ago, and that's honestly what kind of spun this off. I mean, Texas, Kevin was a lead in seeing this type of thing developed in Texas, and we heard the presentation, obviously on SWAT. Brad is our resident expert and quickly becoming so for the state of Oklahoma, but certainly for Oklahoma Conservation Commission for our water quality modeling. Through some of the efforts and things that he's been doing in his work as a part of our water quality team with USDA NRCS, in particular as a partner, we've found that we've tried multiple approaches in trying to settle on one approach that worked well. SWAT ended up being that approach as a model for what we needed to run conservation scenarios and so forth. And so to see something develop like this that basically renders such a wonderfully adept user interface approach versus having to become very familiar with the model from all of its technical aspects and so forth, of course, was very intriguing. And so that's what kind of started this whole thing off. And I'll say that our vision for this obviously has been met through this first year of phase 1, and that was to get an OK-HAWQS product spun up. This is the beta version, if you will, at this point in time. And like Srini said, we're so grateful and appreciative for Kevin and their partnership and hooking us up with Srini. And he's a wonderful resource, as you can tell. He's the Jedi Master of SWAT, and among other things as it pertains to water quality modeling, particularly for conservation scenario, exploration. And so we have a vision now to take this. This is a statewide application that's, hydrologically calibrated, like Srini said, based on the stations that he showed earlier. It's not perfect, but so we're inviting input back into the process, like he said. If you find bugs or areas that don't particularly seem to shake out well, and you've got some additional comment and data to input into the process, that would be greatly appreciated. That said, I would say our vision for going forward is to also pursue chemical calibration for the state HAWQS product as well. And so that's something that's on the to-do list. And a canned BMPs scenario application within the HAWQS environment is also something that we have on the agenda as well. And that would just be basically a canned, I call it the canned BMPs sub app. That would be something that basically we're going to look at, a handful, 6, 8, 10 different BMPs that are kind of the routine to address water quality as a resource concern in SWAT, to be used in some analysis, scenario analysis. Continued technical support, obviously, to access Srini. That's a part of our continued vision here, and desire to keep that going in perpetuity as long as the money holds out. That's of course the magic behind all of this. And then we do want to have another training at some point in time next year. That's going to be a part of this next phase as well, to be even more involved and use the even improved product from what we have now. So all that being said, I mean, I think you all see a great strength in terms of a wonderful user interface approach to SWAT. And the fact that it's a community system, cloud-based, really facilitates, I think, a lot more of a collaborative approach to modeling and transparency that we really kind of need to bring to that process, instead of it just being the black box that it has been to so many people, in particular stakeholders. And I could just go on and on. I just think, there's so much positivity and advantage gained in this HAWQS system because of how it's been developed in the cloud concept. And so I just wanted to sign off just saying that Brad Rogers, brad.rogers@conservation.ok.gov is our lead technical person for conservation and this project in terms of contact for administration. And then Kevin will obviously have that as well with the Water Center. And so I just wanted to definitely make sure that when we sign off that Brad, you had his contact, and would know that he's the one that we would obviously, I would direct you to, in particular from Conservation Commission's perspective, for support for this going forward. So with that, Kevin, I'm through.
All right. Well, thank you, Greg, and really appreciate getting to work with y'all on all this. And I want to thank you, Srini, for finally getting SWAT in a form that even I can use it. This is my third time to be trained on SWAT. My first time was in the late 90s, and we were using GRASS as the GIS system. Then I got trained again in the mid 2000s to using the ArcView and ArcGIS system. And now I think you finally got it where I can use it, Srini. So appreciate that.
I'm not going to give up on you, Kevin. So don't worry.
Well, I don't have anything else to add. Again, if you have questions, comments, feedback, definitely feel free to send them to us here at the Water Center, or to Brad or Greg or others. So we're happy to help out. We definitely want to see this this being used?
Yeah, we also have a feedback right on the website here itself, actually. So if you feel like you want to give, once you sign up and you want to give your feedback through here, you can also click on right there and drop any report that you want to do. Actually, you can just type it in, or you can just do it right here. Actually, you can just come and put your comments right here.
Great. Well, last chance for questions. Any questions? Seeing none, I think we're done for today. Thank you again, Srini, and thank you, Greg and Brad and Boo for getting this all set up.
And thank you to Tracy too. She's done a good
And
job.
Tracy, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kevin.
You bet, Boo.